Chapter 4. I think it began with not breathing, said Spike. Yes, I think it began with holding my breath until sun flares welled up in the dark hallways behind my eyes. And then the blackness swallowed me into it, and silence introduced herself as my new mother. Without breathing, I could fold time and turn the few seconds I lay passed out into centuries containing alternate histories from my own. When I came to, it was like being born all over again. Only this time with my say-so. Yes, said the kid. I think it began with not breathing. It's a short walk from this to eating acid every day. I hang with the older Black Sabbath and AC/DC kids outside the middle school. They take me into their fold. They give me love dressed up like hate. They feed me things like I'm a sparrow dropped out of a nest. When I do 4 panels of window pane all alone, I dissolve into myself. Captain Kangaroo's voice is a dove on the windowsill. He's just come in out of the identical each morning light. A light I can depend on 5 times a week to remain constant and neutral and sere. He hangs up his giant round key ring on the beloved nail that has always been there in the ever-unfolding now of the treasure house. Behind him, the windows are blown out 24/7 with nuclear sunlight. Now I'm 14 and me and Z go chasing the funnel cloud together. I call shotgun and I'm pinned to the front seat of Z's Le Mans. The world on both sides blurs by in warp 9. Someone has stomped up and down on everything, and I can see all the way across the great, flat, purpling scrub to the edge where sky begins. And what hangs there is what hangs behind my eyelids after a sun flare. For days and days after they did Flacco, said Gigi, I was going around seeing blood spattered on everyone's laughing faces. A little girl runs out of Sparks' bodega holding a balloon, and she's screaming, you know. But her scream is all mixed up with other screams. The leftover ones around Flacco's body, and the bigger ones the ambulance brings. The seagulls are in on it too, and they carry the screams all up into the trees over the rooftops. What are they doing this far downtown anyway? That cotton candy on her cheek is not different than brains splashing all over my Converse. Not different from that sticky sound blood makes under my heels. Burnt sugar smells like every gunshot wound to the head forever down through all time. And screams don't belong to the bodies they are leaving. They are just one big scream with no beginning or end that all of us share for a while. The hardness of the world makes music out of this. It shatters and regroups the screams into ricochets, then echoes of those ricochets, so they never really die away. The seagulls are in on it. The sun on his Blinding horse said so. It was beautiful up in there sometimes, inside that place. You take beauty where you find it. Beauty doesn't wait around for your say-so, said Limbo. There was morning glories in that place. I don't know how, but morning glories grew all up the walls, through that broke-ass floor. You could see sometimes through the fumes, through the bruised air we made for ourselves in there. You could see sweat bees all around, climbing up those morning glories. Sweat bees we took for honey bees, but they weren't no honey bees. I grew up with honey bees in South Carolina and honey all on my toast every morning. You never had honey till you had it fresh off a honeycomb straight from the hive. So we made these sweat bees into honey bees in our shining city in the clouds. And the morning glories bloomed all up around us on those foul, stank-ass mattresses. And those mattresses took off like magic carpets and flew us all around the high heavens. And honeybees made us honey, and we spread it all over ourselves and each other and everything that walks or crawls. And then we burned through all that mountain of rock we dumped out there in a big rock pile from a stash Cray-Cray found. A huge stash in one of those long green duffel bags like they give you in the army. There must have been 10,000 vials in that bag for when they busted the red top. Everybody went down in that raid, and they never found the stash. It was work, that's what it was. That's what it turned into. Popping the caps on each one of those little vials and digging out all those little pebbles, heaping them up in pyramids like those ones in the movies. You start out pissing down your legs because the green leaf gods of crack cocaine done smiled down on you. Then your fingers start to cramp and your hands start to ache just from the need inside you. The need that makes you go after every last little yellow crumb in those little toy vials. But we looked up one day and it was gone. Gone. The mattresses were too soggy to fly, and the walls were peeling wallpaper with ugly little prints of faded morning glories. The honeybees were sweat bees, and the sweat bees had turned into flies. And now the flies were laying eggs all up in our armpits. It smelled like, I don't know, a human slaughterhouse. Not long for this world fiends in hospital couture, mixing it up with high school sophomores on day passes from their third or fourth detox. It's what we do in here when you take away the one and only thing we do best. Girls from Bryn Mawr and Sarah Lawrence leavened in with hard mamacitas down from Brook Avenue on work release, getting all up in each other's faces. Tattooed teardrops with Yves Saint Laurent. They pass around the same cold triple latte and leave 9 kinds of lipstick on the rim. Since the women staked it out, the right side of this meeting smells like the perfume counter at Bloomingdale's. If Bloomingdale's were on Rikers Island. Undertaker's makeup, says this new girl with processed curls like Shirley Temple. You know, to hide your tracks. I used to do this Undertaker for like $500. He had me play dead on a slab in the basement where they fix up, you know, the bodies. They got every kind of skin tone in the rainbow down there. He used to make me over to look deceased or whatever. Plus, you just know they always flush with cash 'cause business be slamming like 24/7. Especially these days. The hard fluorescents are more than unkind. They tell every story on every face before those faces can open their mouths. How low can you go? How low exactly is there? Mannequin stares and dopamine shuffles. It starts to feel like the waiting room in Beetlejuice. Rich bitches sprawled like poultry with fat 401ks who never missed a meal or a board meeting while burning out the little blue veins between their toes. Side by side with trash and vaudeville punkettes frozen stiff in the amber of the 1970s. Anorexic pole dancers in from New Jersey commiserating with ghost-faced counter girls and hostesses hostessing who knows what. Still in uniform with tape over their name tags, trying hard between shifts to catch the sunrise or the lunchtime or the midnight miracles. Trying hard, but not that hard, not to fall back into the natural stasis their bodies were born for. Trying for a while not to join that newcomer on the slab. The one with the Shirley Temple curls. Sometimes when we were dope sick, said Pruno, we'd throw open that big fat red PDR, you know? The physician's desk reference we boosted from out the Strand, and we'd read all about the drugs we were fiending for. There's lots of color pictures. All the good drugs are laid out in there like Playboy centerfolds. Only they are the actual size of themselves, you know? More than once, I've been tempted to grab the scissors and cut out that succulent orange 40-milligram methadone diskette and swallow it down whole. The little wafer says Lily on the back side, with Lily written out in this fine, delicate hand. It might as well be saying, home, sweet home, or peace in the valley. And the front side is scored with a deep crease dividing it 4 ways. Each quarter containing 10 milligrams of the strongest dope on planet Earth. This makes it easier for some nurse to break the wafer into quarters and dispense it behind a bulletproof window. I always think of those wafers they give out in churches representing the risen body of Christ. Jesus said, "Here's my body. Take a bite and pass it on. Leave some for the others, but don't worry. There's always more. You'll see. My body never runs out." And that's the difference between Jesus and any kind of dope, see? Dope always runs out. It's built right there into the design to keep you chasing it. Where would we be if everything was an all-you-can-eat Jesus? We'd be done before we ever got started. To my eyes, the fine print for methadone reads like scripture. I've memorized it like the Pledge of Allegiance. Methadone is an opioid agonist, motherfuckers, and therefore has abuse potential and risk of fatal overdose from respiratory failure. Believe that. Addiction may occur in patients who obtain methadone illicitly or in those appropriately prescribed the drug. The risk of addiction in any dumb motherfucker is unknown. The misuse by crushing, chewing, snorting, or injecting the dissolved product can result in overdose and death, motherfuckers. To discourage abuse, the smallest appropriate quantity should be dispensed, and proper disposal instructions for unused drug should be given immediately to all sick junkies everywhere. Monday afternoons, Blanka's off to the wilds of Queens, said Zero. She's a private duty hospice nurse, taking on the worst cases nobody else will touch. Sometimes I think I formed her out of my rib. It's like a calling for her now, ministering to the doomed. I know without saying it, this is also what ties her to me. Blank works alone in her street clothes, in people's houses, sitting there on her perch until the hourglass runs out. A few weeks ago, she came gliding in with 2 doggy bags full of ice blue liquid morphine. We took a baggie each and bit a little hole in one corner, and then fell back on the futon and drained the goo into each other's gaping beaks like something out of Caligula. The stuff that happens to people you wouldn't believe. The mailman's head gets bashed in by a bolt from a vacant blue sky. Now there's a steel plate where half his brain used to live. And drool pours down his chin like the waters of Lourdes. The woman with the bed sores Blank has to keep turning and turning as if she were slow roasting on a spit. She graduated Princeton and used to run triathlons. Now she's 3 and swims laps in her own urine. The room fills up with rotten lunch meat. Or the one she's waiting on now. His testicles big as cantaloupes, nestled on their very own cushion like the way you might display Cleopatra's jewels. Boils, fevers, night sweats, screeches that come out of some faraway jungle. I want to die! He blows word bubbles at her. Turn the world off! Turn it off! TikTok. Bodies that used to worship each other, that won prizes and built things and tore things apart. Bodies that used to contain people in them. They hang around like you wouldn't believe, long after the people inside them are gone. And the nightstand, it talks to Blank too, louder than the bodies talk. I'm yours. I'm yours, says morphine sulfate. Take me away from all this. Maybe because you tag along with the two of them on a Harley run through the defoliated hills, said Bam Bam. Maybe because you ride close behind him, hugging fast to his waist, his belly flab all Play-Doh through a Black Sabbath tee that smells like human roadkill. Maybe because the Motel 6s only have 2 beds for 3 people. Maybe because he takes your small white hand and swallows it up into his own. Maybe his fast food mouth is all over yours. So pretty, he says. You're so goddamn pretty. The world hasn't slammed the lid on you yet. Maybe a 357 lies coiled on the nightstand. Maybe there is no choice but your fingers milking the skin back. No choice but to float up and out of your body and watch from above while the other you pretends to get very sleepy. Maybe the moon spilled all over the floor sees everything you do. Maybe the moon eats the night sky and leaves nothing but teeth marks disguised as stars. Maybe the stars are just like you. They appear to be hanging there, but they're only the spent light of themselves. What if you're dreaming this? What if you're not? What the fuck is the difference? Oh, if I could start my life over, I wouldn't know how, said Felony. I guess I'd put together a montage of TV scenarios I grew up in front of. There'd be a house with breakaway windows where it's always California outside. A series of half-hour episodes where flash floods of laughter swell up and die away around our family's every move. Things would get comically screwed and then sorted out for the good of all in prime time with a not-too-subliminal lesson smuggled in that would fix us temporarily, yet leave us same time next week craving more. Mom and Dad would be stand-ins for pretty much all moms and dads. Their troubles are fun to watch. They are palsy-wowsy in a filial and showy kind of way, having rehearsed it earlier. The entire shooting match depends on this construct. Meanwhile, it's our job to be unobtainably cute kids and stay that way. We'd all intermingle with such harmless edginess and grace in quick little 8-minute fragments that tie up neatly at the end. We'd live and die around commercial breaks. Desire is born there and projected back on us. How sweet is that? Nothing is ever allowed to fuck with this formula. Some things are still unassailable, you see. It's been tested among focus groups. We're perfectly imperfect and abbreviated and immortal, even if we get canceled next season. Normal is slippery, said Boney. When everyone around you is slamming dope in between their toes, the hollows of their knees, the tops of their hands, the soft underbellies of their wrists, the pits of their elbows. their Galapagos bird necks, and straight into their throbbing groins. Normal is rearranged for you. Oh, we like to think on a good day that we are not much different from the kids in Beach Blanket Bingo. Instead of surfing, we dig around for veins. Instead of volleyball, there's aggravated assault. When money runs out, we steal things or sell our bodies. Heroin and cocaine are what we have instead of a beach. It is cheap and good and easier to buy than bazooka bubble gum. In our beach blanket movie, Frankie Avalon's cheekbones are presenting through his bombed-out face, and Annette Funicello is a pathological liar and a thief and a whore. And maybe she is tending to your dying mother. Wu-Tang is this white boy from the Heights. Sweat glazes him like a Peking duck. Voices carry on in his head sometimes, and he jumps out of his metal chair to take the conversation outside. We ask that you keep your shares under 5 minutes and not share twice until everybody blah, blah, blah. Wu-Tang's got a posse inside him, all of them wanting the floor. We've worked out a deal where he sorts them out beforehand so it doesn't get too crowded up in here. But people are people, that's a fact. Even the ones in his head. He's some kind of Rain Man when it comes to WuTang Clan. He knows every last rhyme from every album, even the bootlegs and the one-offs. He does all the voices. Old Dirty Bastard, RZA, GZA, Method Man, Ghostface. Most of this was before he was born. Like he's channeling them through some lightning rod in his skinny white body. Wu's mom shot a lot of speed and other things when she was carrying him. He was delivered way too early, and he lived in a glass tank for a while. Like a baby aquarium with no water, he says. Wu swears he can remember living inside his mom. The rushing sound like the ocean when she took a hit of meth. To hear him tell it, he was one of twins, smaller than salamanders. And they spoke to each other through a cable in some kind of blood language. The all-night factory of their mom's heart thrummed and thrummed in their tiny little ear holes. Wu says he was born first, but the other Wu never slid down the chute. His mom died on the table laughing like a hyena, full of all kinds of good drugs, with a smile on her face. Wu swears he can recall this like yesterday. Well, you might get out of the life, says Gigi. But it never gets all the way out of you. Tonight it's all about denial and how we can't live with the things we did or the things that got done to us. There's no place to put those things, so they float around outside us like bodies bobbing on a river. I don't know what got into us that day. What seed? What poison? We swelled up with hate and we needed to visit it on something. Dash came in with a hot Leica to trade for 5 or 6 vials. We didn't even blink. We told him to get the fuck unceremoniously out. It was like we were losing our sense of taste and smell and the feel of our skin against the air. Our fingers were like tendrils spread out from our arms, looking for a wall to climb. The thing to do was more dancing with the one who brung us, you know? I loaded up a shot that was to be the shot of all shots. I pulled down a giant spoon from the cupboard we never went anywhere near. The kind of spoon used for stirring big stews we would never get around to cooking. It was all right. We were going to make it all right, and this was the spoon you use for that. I bent the thing to my will across my knee like the way you'd break a piece of firewood. It looked like a prop in Bride of Frankenstein when I got done. I could see right away I was going to have to use the eye of our stove to cook anything up in it. We never turned the stove on, and I remember fumbling around through every dial and button until I heard that click, 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 and I saw flames bloom up in a nice blue circle. I loaded up 2 bundles of dope into that big Betty Crocker motherfucker, and I followed this with 5 or so full cc's of tap water from the syringe. I felt like a stork going back and forth, filling my beak from the faucet. I remember stirring this muck up real good with the plunger while she unfolded I don't know how many tinfoil sticks of the flash cocaine into the stew. Now, the Flash had been putting people on their knees lately. This little novice whore from Jersey named Tinkerbell had gone in there last week, right into their doorway on Rivington where they sling. And she'd banged a couple of hits into her neck right there on the stairs and right in front of the runners, just to make sure, you know? Just to make sure it was up to snuff that day. And then out come Tinkerbell into the sunlight and fell right down on her knees, just like she'd found God. That look on her face. She folded back onto herself in a way you'd think was impossible for a young girl. And she died right there in front of us. Her eyelids going like hummingbirds. Now, their business went through the roof after that. So I stirred the coke into that shot and I smelled it all the way down my spine. It was like my tail unspooled across the floor and gills sprouted on both sides of my neck. I held the giant spoon over the stove with both hands like I was cooking eggs over a campfire. Wolves howled and snowcaps melted off the Chrysler Building. It all came together in there and it sizzled up nice and clear and ready to bang. I could see my skull on the bubbling surface grinning back at me like Karen Carpenter. They would have to be punished. All of them at once, all down through time, folded up like Tinkerbell into one person. The person beside me, maybe, or the person I never looked at twice in the mirror. We dropped a whole cotton ball into the spoon, and I And I turned to her and I said, how many junkies does it take to change a light bulb? And she said, I don't know. I don't know, babe. How many? And I said to her, wrong answer, babe. I get to go first. The answer is one. One is all that is needed here. It only takes one. But don't count on it. This girl from the lanes, this girl we call Baby Mama, she brings her baby in slung low in a homemade papoose around her neck. She pulls out a withered breast and the baby suckles away like a swollen leech. Nobody can read the tired gang tags across Baby Mama's chest, but somebody went to a lot of trouble. The cursive looks like an invitation to Buckingham Palace. The thing about her baby is it never cries and it's way too big to nurse. It just hangs slack there with a mouth full of dry tit, making these little piglet noises. I had it. Now they say I ain't got it, says Baby Mama. She can't be more than 16, but the stories leak out of her like Chernobyl. I know my mom's died from it. My little girl was born with it. But now it's almost undetectable, she says, turning the word over and over. Undetectable. Outside, they're tearing up the streets with jackhammers to make room for more sidewalk. More sidewalk for more feet to carry more bodies of more people into a future many of us have already used up. The new sidewalk with the new feet and the new bodies will never have heard a single one of our names or the gruesome backstories we spin out in this basement. The streets are a self-cleaning oven, said some cop in some movie once. The world reboots itself. Who we see here, what we say here. Wu-Tang's got a birthday, if you can believe the crowd in his head. He's celebrating 1 year clean tonight, but this changes about as often as he changes XXL whiteys. The thing to do is just roll with Wu. You call him up to the podium. You dig out a key tag, whichever him is up for. And you make a human A-frame together, hugging each other, and you ask him how he did it. How'd you do it? Wu-Tang's got a thing for Baby Mama, because they both grew up in fish tanks, he says. Meaning they were both born addicted and started out life in incubators. He goes in for a Rain Man hug with Baby Mama, ignoring the squirming sack on her belly. The room gets weird and biblical. The jackhammers loosen the fillings in our teeth. They give off a smell like Blanka. Cray-cray is all misty for the heyday. That building was Cracktopia. Remember that? Way back in the lanes. That whole tower was about the rock. You go in there, they got doormen, torch your stem, sell you a bottle of water from out the hydrant, hold your head over a bucket, bring you a whore, and keep a whore off you. If you died up in there, there was no place to go but down, because you were already in heaven. You were above heaven. They had rooms all up on that second floor. You could lay up in there for days, weeks. I met my wife up in that tower. She's all gone. And I'm still here. But then there was that time with the body at the black hole, said little boy. You have to understand, the black hole's not a hole, really. It's the top floor of the worst or the best of all the dope houses along 8th Street, depending on how you box your moral compass. So you have to understand, the black tape crew, they took over the building, and we turned the upstairs into a shooting gallery. And we used to duck in there during sweeps, Down in them streets, you could hear those ridiculous blips from some cruiser out of the 9th Precinct, sweeping the area for stray runners and scabs and such. It has this questioning tone, the blips. Like, blip, blip. So you have to understand, over time, one or the other of us tricked the place out with the usual apple crates and weeping candles, and some tweak even dragged a festering wraparound couch up there in 3 sections, making 3 trips all up those rotten stairs like an ant hauling 10 times its own weight. You have to understand, the couch had been set on fire and then pissed on to put the fire out, which would have smelled really ripe if the smell didn't have to compete with things like fresh swirls of human manure way off in the corners, and spent condoms, and I want to say Tampax. Because you have to understand, all shooting galleries have a few old rusty Tampax stuck to the floor like last night's party favors. You see all the 1,000 things humans leave behind who have gone beyond caring about being human. So this body, right? This body, it sat there with us on that giant couch with a half-gone syringe hanging off its neck like a praying mantis. And the spike was still half full of perfectly good medicine. You have to understand. The matter of time before some thoughtful soul plucks it out of his neck and finishes the shot in their own arm. So who was I want to ask you? Who was I to stand on ceremony? The sun was like a sickle cell that day, stalking us into the squats, said Boney. He's fresh out of Rikers, and he makes the rooms smell like that magic powder from grade school they throw all over vomit. A little nig was working the black tape with his shirt off already, and a nice little colt sticking up out of his boxers. The handle of that gun looked like a piece of dried fruit. And little Nig drummed on it with his little fingers. He kept this off-brand pit bull beside him at all times, right? To compensate for who knows what. But that dog had said or done something wrong that day. And I saw Nig shoot it through the spine without aiming or interrupting his endless cocaine soliloquy. Nig was always moving his mouth in the shapes of words. But the words came out funny, like they'd been shaken up in a tumbler and thrown back into the air. Look, I'm one to talk. We all get that way when we go off on a coke jag. But little Nig lived in his own little town called cocaine. And the drug had its hand up his back all the time now, like a ventriloquist dummy. That dog, by the way, the dog that talked back, I saw that dog crawl off on its belly using only its two front legs like it was breaststroking through the weeds. It swelled up in the sun, and we watched it go through all the stages of disassembly over that summer. And it became a thing, you know. A thing to check in on the murdered dog on our way to and from the black tape. And we made all the fun of it we knew how to make until it stopped being a dog, you know? And just sank down into the elemental state of garbage, like all the other garbage. Oh, people laugh at the strangest things, goes Squeegee. Half Sam laughed when a bullet tore through his neck. And then he sank down on Avenue D, and here came these bright red bubbles through a blowhole in his throat. The bubbles and the laughter married together like they do, and suddenly we were all five again, and the bubbles were ivory soap suds throwing rainbows back at the sun. We laughed along with Half Sam because he started the whole thing. And then he laughed less. And then he stopped laughing. Our laughter went on a bit longer and trailed off in mean little chicken cackles. Half Sam was dead, and that's all there was to say about it. I remember we stood over him for a while and looked down into his dumb, dead face. But it wasn't Sam anymore. What we were staring at now was no different than rags or compost or some slop thrown out behind Veselka, you know? I saw this girl once make a big show out of jumping in front of the downtown 3 train. She revved herself up like they do in cartoons. Her legs going like a buzzsaw into her skirt. It was all so overdone. We thought she was putting us on. We laughed and whistled and applauded. "Take it off!" We hooted her on until she did it. "Bobo's got a brand new car," said Zero. "He cruises it up and down Avenue A with the price still soaped on the windows. He steals about one a week from these lots over in Jersey. And we sit in Leshko's watching Bobo and the world go by like it's our aquarium. Maybe we're the fish. Bobo shoots about a river of dope every single day. It's a proven fact. Sometimes we go off on smash and grabs with him. We swim along the lines of parked cars on side streets, and the stuff inside calls out to us like mermaids. Anything we see belongs to us. A soprano saxophone, a pair of Altec Lansing speakers, a diamond engagement ring. We never know, but if we listen, stuff calls out to us. Most days we walk around like there's nothing wrong. Like there's nothing under the sun wrong with us at all. The streets are full of blood. You get it on you and you wear it around like war paint. Last week, Spacely took off some guy who was trying to take him off. He stuck a drill bit in the guy's head and it bobbed there like an antenna. Blood sprayed all over us like a lawn sprinkler. It was only fair. The subject of tonight's round robin is, what was the best day of your life? And felony kicks it off. The day I tried on my brother's biker leathers. Leather pants, leather jacket, with this really kind of cheesy chainmail undershirt like you might get from the cutout bin at Jericho Mall. It must have been a Sunday. One of those comatose Sundays with everybody off in church. Or everybody lying about being off in church. I remember the feel of my hard nipples underneath that shirt, peeking out through the mesh. I knew right then. I knew what I was and how life was. And I knew those two things were never going to line up. There was a little glass bulb in one of the jacket pockets. I stood in front of the mirror and I posed up and down in those leathers and I hit on that pipe, you know, with my brother's little scorch torch. You know, the kind with the Chinese dragon on it. I went shoo, shoo, shoo. And I hit on that pipe until the room turned into the Taj Mahal. I didn't know what meth was. I'd never even smoked a Marlboro or shared a joint. All I know is I felt saved. The light fell all over me, and I felt singled out by some emissary from above. Like that, you know? I felt loved. For the first time ever, I felt loved. I had my first orgasm in front of that mirror. Sunday afternoon, 14 years old. Cunt Lick, Long Island. Now every time I see a dragon, I get a little twinge. I get a little twinge between my legs. Best day, goes Boney. The day I come out of Sing Sing. I did 5 years up in there for manslaughter. For a man in this case I most certainly did not slaughter or never even met. But I kept my mouth shut and I did those 5 years. When I hit that gate, it was like the world exploded and rainbows all around me. The greens were so motherfucking green. I could smell them. They burned my eyes. And blue? I never seen such blue. The sky was piled up with cities of clouds. I wanted to move into one of those cloud cities. Well, if I had a best day, I must have missed it, said Daisy. She's holding a little stuffed panda with all the fake fur plucked out. She used to do this to her own hair until some counselor in detox gave her a panda as a stand-in. Now the bear looks like a fetus cradled in her arms. A fetus with 2 wild, yellow, staring eyes. Or I slept through it. I think I slept through it. I've slept through entire years, you know? Maybe that's the best day of all. The one you sleep through. The walls exhale around us. People are buried in them. People who came in full of fire and light. Hit their knees every morning like mantises. One girl who was sure she was picked up by her nape and set down again in these rooms to bear witness and carry the message. Talk the talk as if it came through her and made a glowing filament of her body. People who grew back their shining hair and nails. A guy from the lanes who wrote a book and went on speaking tours, and then there was talk of a play, and then a movie of the play, and then a movie of the making of his making of. People who reconciled with the ones they came from and the ones they dragged into this world. A mother of 3 who sold off her youngest for a sheet of the ice and a crawl space to smoke it in. Accepted whatever they could not change and set about redeeming everything from here to the exosphere. One kid who went from 5 grams a day to Everest and K2 and base jumping in a quick early death, bowed their heads in circles of invocation while the cosmos yawned open beneath their feet. An ex-bouncer and car thief who always came early and stayed late and nuked his Sanka and led us in prayer like Billy Graham whenever he could. People who made amends after amends until the amends were all used up and there were no more to make. The walls breathe and sweat and fill up with bodies. One for every empty chair. Another night up at our place playing Susie Homemaker, said Zero. A kid named Skate pulled out a toy gun that looked very real and began doing Russian roulette on everybody. He went around from head to head, pulling back the hammer and clicking against all our temples. He made the universal gunshot sound with his mouth like every kid makes. Most of us were in a deep, deep nod. Our heads bobbed like drooping sunflowers. And Skate. It was like something out of Lord of the Flies. Blank made an announcement. There's to be no more smoking without your own personal ashtray. And she handed these around like a stewardess, even to the drooping sunflowers and the people who never smoke. The ashtrays look like gold and silver starfish. She's getting better at playing hostess to a room full of very unstable guests, any one of whom could jump up and put us all face down on the floor. Skate threw his starfish into the air and shot it. And then he grabbed another and another. And sparks flew off the ends of cigarettes. We're always putting out little brush fires in the carpet. Disposable Manny's here to tell us all about space bugs. So I smoked a couple foils and little smoke signals went all out to the forward operating posts all over my luminous naked body of Christ, and it was clear, it was crystalline, sparkling clear that the smoke in my lungs was holding the light, and the light was the whispering word of God, and the bugs were inside me to feed on the word in the form of the light carried into my blood through the smoke in my lungs. So I took a blowtorch. I took that little Newport Mini and I went after them and I rained hellfire down on the little bug spy stations under my skin, and I called in a snake and nape is what we used to call it back in Kabul, which stands for napalm and white phosphorus. I called in an airstrike on all the bugs all at once, all over me, and I went around all over my naked self with that little Newport mini torch, and I scorched the lid off. I scorched the top layer of my consecrated flesh off, and there they were under there, running through their little trenches and spider holes. I knew it. And I rooted them out, every last single little bug. I did not stop. I did not stop until that butane was all burned up, and that is the way. That is the only way you can really get them once. You can only really get them out once they've landed on your toes and laid their eggs. And I'm going back to Portchester later. Could somebody give me a ride? We try sometimes, not using anything for days or weeks, said Zero. till the hours fill up with a giant stillness. The world starts to show itself to you without drugs. You see without wanting to how badly everything is put together. Look how the soles of people's shoes come loose and wag their tongues at you from the streets. All this time, they were talking about you, and now you know. Along with this, the beating of wings, and you toss this way and that way, and you look stupid doing it the way bad actors look, faking a meteor shower on the bridge of the Enterprise, or blonde kids in a schoolyard running away from imaginary gulls, and yes, there are no birds who belong to the wings and no wings to go with the beating. Just the giant, still shadows passing over you and over you, like the palm of a giant hand dismissing you. You stick a toe over the line, and you feel no ground there. Just a cold blast of wind, maybe. And that pull, like a drunk girl at Pyramid pulling you out on the dance floor. It's not like either of you started out wanting this. You don't even think about it. You just do what's in front of you to do until nothing's left in front of you but that girl. That girl with no fingers and sour breath like a baby. The same kind of breath that draws rats to the crib. There's lots of other stuff on your side of the line. The world of things. Things you can chase down and own for a while. Light on the water. Love, even. But nothing like that first rushing of wings in your blood. Everything after that rushing is extra. And even the rushing you only get once. There was this speed that showed up last summer on Grand Street that allowed me to commune with Travis Bickle, said Boney. Travis would appear on the third or fourth day of a good jag, and we'd stroll around together arm in arm, like a couple of low-level gambinos, talking without moving our mouths about the ins and outs of the movie Taxi Driver, which he was pretty much trapped in forever. Now, these speed visitations allowed Travis a little break from the endless loop of the movie going around and around. The Sybil Shepherd situation, the Jodie Foster thing, the Mohawk and the shootout and the dead roses burning over and over in that sink. You are only as healthy as you feel, said Travis wordlessly to me. Now, none of my brave homegirls and boys would touch even a little thumbnail of this speed, which was of a pinkish hue they all found, quite correctly, suspect. They took to calling it that psycho-faggot angel dust, which was all right with me because there was more left over to share with my new friend Travis. Now, it's important not to confuse this meth with the Hell's Angels variety being sold at popular prices over on 3rd. Well, that crank is much darker, both in color and effect. And it has some kind of secret sauce in it that makes you want to shave all your body hair and beat the daylights affectionately out of total strangers. Which is why I bet the angels favor it and stand proudly behind their product. So me and Travis, we walked up and down 13th Street trying to reenact that first encounter with Sport, the fake Indian pimp played by Harvey Keitel. We alternated roles. Me playing Travis and Travis playing Sport, the wannabe pimp, then Travis playing Travis and me standing in the doorway playing Sport. I knew all the lines of everybody great and small in Taxi Driver, and it seemed like a waste to have Travis be Travis all the time, so we tried switching off, playing all the other people involved. Especially my favorite scene with Sport, slow dancing and sweet-talking Jodie Foster. I can do a killer Jodie Foster. Absolutely killer. Faithful is the name we've given to the purple snake that runs along the top of Blank's right hand, said Zero. It is the only vein on the frontier of her body where we can get a register for a shot. I can see she has been going there without me now. A little procession of tracks smothered in makeup, running along the back of the snake. The nurse is learning to minister to herself. I pretend I don't notice. I can also see she is pregnant. It is not mine. The stuff we do together doesn't lead to this. There's the three of us together now. Just the three of us. Me and her and the project. The thing we share but never talk about. The only thing we share more than our blood. Me and her and the project. The thing that grows and grows the more we feed it by not talking about it. But we think about it. Always we are thinking about it. And now I'm telling you about it just to starve it a little. Because maybe to talk about the project, out loud is to take away its power. I don't know yet. I just don't know.